Cashflow Cowboy at it again. Today, we're going to talk about getting started in real estate investment in 2022. Real estate investment is not that hard, but it is going to take some blood, sweat, and tears. Whether you own your own house now or whether you are a tenant yourself, anyone can get started in real estate investment, and here is how. Step number one in real estate investment is getting yourself prepared. That means watching videos like this, reading books, checking out blogs, meeting with local investor groups, and other things like this to get yourself prepared in real estate investment. Because there are many different strategies that one would follow, and you need to find what works best for you with your money, your time, etc. Someone here? Yeah, it's one of my tenants paying rent. There she is driving off. They're late. They were supposed to be due yesterday. Today's the 1st. Let's go check it out. All right, look at that. We got the last rent check. Let's open it up. Look at that, the last late rent check of the month. At least they're only a day late. That's pretty good. That's how you keep that cash flow flowing in. Back to the video as we were going along. So we're talking about finding the best strategy that works for you. And this means whether you have a lot of time or a small amount of time, whether you're high paid or low paid, that's going to kind of curtail the strategy that works for you. If you're a lawyer and you're making a ton of hour, a doctor, etc., you may want to buy more of a turnkey property or invest in another property ownership group and those type of situations. Now, if you're a complete DIYer, maybe you want to get something that's a little bit blighted, perhaps it's just dated and you're going to do carpet and paint and these other things yourself. Not too much reno, but something that's easily able to be taken on by yourself as a first-time investor. Now, if you're a contractor, you may want a full-blown rehab where you're going to go in, you're going to pay, cents on the dollar for acquiring the asset, and you can go in and you can also, for cents on the dollar, because you have crews, go in and fix up the property, create a ton of sweat equity, and then refinance it and rent it out. Now, those are the different strategies. You've got to figure out what works best for you. If you're not quite sure, you're probably somewhere in the middle. Perhaps you get a property that would rent more or less as is, or more or less as is, and then if you wanted to add more spiff and shine to the product, you can, but something that's easily rentable as is going to be your best way to start. You won't have any downtime. You won't have to sit and pay mortgage for months, maybe do a little paint in between the closing, a little bit of cleaning, a little tenant proofing, etc. We'll talk about that later on in the video. Step number two, getting your finances and credit figured out. Now, whether you have millions of dollars ready to allocate into real estate or a few $1,000s and you're looking to start your plan, don't skip this step. Obviously, you need to get pre-qualified or have your money ready to go to buy the property. If you've got the money in the bank, you can show proof of funds and you're ready to more or less skip to the next step. Most people traditionally will need this step to get pre-qualified with their credit and their monetary situation to figure out what they can afford with their current situation or what they can afford if they create a plan and work hard to that goal. Now, I would recommend going to your local lending institution to figure out the next step in your plan. That will be a credit union, a bank, or a mortgage broker. I also recommend that you find someone that comes highly recommended. Hopefully you have other friends and family or other investors in the area that you know that they can recommend to you some of these lenders. If not, you can search online and easily find folks with good reviews. I still would recommend getting 2 to 3 or more different opinions, especially if you've got some work to do as far as saving, cutting debt, or building credit, or fixing your credit score. You definitely want to get multiple opinions on the matter and do what the culmination of those opinions say to do so that you don't have any outliers. Your local lender will help you figure out what you need for a down payment, what your credit score needs to be, and how you're going to finance the deal. Now, traditionally, if you're looking for an investment property, it's probably going to be somewhere between 20 and 25% as your down payment, and you're going to need a 720 credit score or above. And they will look at your global debt to income ratio and make sure that you are able to afford the mortgage payment on the property if something were to happen. Traditionally, most banks written, at least in 2022, will use 75% of the rental income towards the qualification of the mortgage. Meaning, if you're making $100 a month in rent, 75% of that can go towards the coverage of the mortgage payment. So if your rental property rents for $1,000 a month, you can take $750 of that towards your mortgage payment, and that will come off the top of the line, which will help you qualify for more properties since you're not personally living there. Now, if you were looking at this property as a primary residence and eventually you're going to turn it into an investment property, or maybe you're going to house hack and rent rooms, or some other strategy that you've come up with, you may be able to put less down. Somewhere between 3 to 5% is what I've seen as the total bottom minimum of what you can put down on a property with a conventional mortgage. Now, you will have paid mortgage insurance, which will be somewhat expensive, but hopefully as you update the property or as the market improves, you might eventually be able to get rid of the mortgage insurance once you have enough equity built up in the property. Your local lender will help you work through your financials and make sure that you have, generally speaking, 1 to 2 years of tax returns to show proof of income to qualify for a property. Now, if you're self-employed, it can be a little more difficult and you have to show at least 2 years of tax return. But again, your local lender will work with you on that and help you get everything in line in order to buy the property that you're looking for or properties. Now that means if you're self-employed, you probably may not want to write everything off under the sun. Again, I would work with your local lender, work with your local CPA, and make sure that you're being realistic with your write-offs so that you're not making no money, because if you make no money, you can't qualify to buy a rental property. Now, the other thing that they will help you work through is to make sure that you don't have too many debts, especially debts that negatively affect your credit, such as car payments, lease payments, these sort of things. They can really hamper your ability to be able to buy a property with a conventional loan. The other thing that they will help you work through is your credit situation, and you may have to build your credit score or fix your credit score. You should always be cognizant of your credit score. Now, before you even go into these financial institutions, I would recommend that you have an understanding of what your credit score is. You can get this for free from Credit Karma or most major credit card companies, or direct through the credit bureaus themselves, and they will give you the score so that you can take this to the financial institution so they won't have to do a hard credit pull when you go to meet with them. In fact, when you meet with these financial institutions, you should come with your credit score, your income, and your debts and your financial assets ready to go when you go to the bank or the financial institution, so you can show them the full gamut of your current situation so they can easily help you create a plan or immediately start the process of getting into your first real estate investment. Now, if you want to learn more on getting your free credit score, check the link below for another video that walks through a step-by-step process of how to get your credit score for free online without it negatively affecting as a hard credit pull potentially would. Now, if your monies and credit are in order, you can move to step number 3. If not, you need to stay at step 2 and continue to build your credit, repair your credit, and build up your savings, your nest egg, your cushion. Hand me that tube up there. Step number 3. Here's where you want to identify potential areas to invest. Now, ideally, these will be areas that you're already familiar with. Potentially you live near there, or you're very geographically conscious of those areas. And you got to make sure you buy property on the right side of the track and not the wrong side of the track. It's very important if you want to have success in real estate investing. Now, I would also recommend that you start in a C-class or above property. Now, C-class is about the middle to lower end of the spectrum, but I wouldn't go into the D-class of property, such as your Detroits or your very blighted communities. You really do not want to invest in those areas starting out unless you are very prepared to deal with tenants in properties that can be a little bit more difficult. So, checking out the areas that you're going to invest in. When I say the right side of the tracks or the wrong side of the tracks, I literally mean on one side of the train tracks, you may be getting $2,000 a month, and on the other side, you could be getting $1,600 a month. And that could have anything to do with multitude of different things. It could be geographical, it could be the power authority, it could be the quality of the houses, it could be a number of things. Now, I'm not saying you stay on one side or the other, but I'm saying you just need to weigh out all of the area that you're looking to invest in and decide what is best for you. Now, personally, I don't care what's going on. As long as the rents are high, that's the area I want to buy in. Or if the rents are going to be high one day, that's the area I want to be in. And maybe for you, you're looking for the potential future. You want to buy in an area where the rents are lower now, but you see no difference between that side of the tracks and this side of the tracks. And in 5 years, it's going to be the same and you can get these for pennies on the dollar. That's something you have to evaluate, and you'll know that if you learn your market. Now, I would recommend getting on Zillow, Redfin, these types of things, figuring out what properties are selling for. Most states will tell you what the properties are sold for. You can also look on these properties and keep an eye on properties that have recently sold in your area or the area you're identifying, and you can find them later on listed as rentals. And you may even also be able to look on the likes of Zillow and see a rental property that's popped up, and you can go see if it's recently sold, what it sold for, what its condition is. You may be able to go to an open house and assess the condition of the property and assess open houses for properties that are for sale as well, because you do want to get a really good feel of what's going on in the market, what types of finishes people are doing in houses that are for sale and for rent, and how much you have to pay for the 3-bedroom versus a 4-bedroom. Do 3 bedrooms rent quicker than 4 bedrooms? You're really able to figure out all of this info on a lot of these real estate sites. It will tell you how many days they've been on the market, how many applications they've had. Different sites will tell you different amounts of things. You can figure out rents on Craigslist, Zillow, Rentometer, Hot Pads. There's really quite a few websites out there that you can figure out all of this data. There's even some micro-dataing websites that actually just break all this information down in those as well. So you really can find a lot of things. I really love Zillow though, because you can just get the raw market of exactly what people are looking at when they are going to rent these properties. Somewhat similar with Facebook and maybe less so with Craigslist as well. Now, it's very crucial that you pay attention to how long things have been sitting on the market, because if something's rented on the market and they've had multiple price decreases, that would be a good sign that the property was rented or at least posted at too high of a price, versus properties that they post them and within 3 days they have 100 applications. That's where you know they've probably priced it right or even maybe low in that market to get the occupancy rate up. Now, once you've identified the exact market or area that you want to invest in, you've got to find a high quality realtor. As with dating, be cautious. The desirable are hard to attain and the attainable are undesirable, generally speaking. Now, what I mean by that is someone that's a rookie that may not be familiar with the area or investors, you may not want to hire them. Especially if you're a beginner and you're starting out, you really want someone who's more experienced who can help you through the process. Now, remember, they are working for a commission, so you need to cover your own ass. Do not trust a realtor and expect them to look out for your best interest, because only you can do that. Your ass, you look out for it. Take the realtor's info with a grain of salt and verify everything they said. They're there to tell you about the market, but they're also there to sell you a house or to help you buy a house, and they're getting a commission off of that. So they're economically incentivized to get you into something as quick as possible and for as much money as possible. It's kind of weird how it works, but just know that going into it, most realtors are honest and most realtors will help you out, but just remember how they are economically incentivized when you're going into that process so that you can properly understand the market. And that's why I'm telling you to engage a realtor at this point, after you've researched the market yourself online, unbiased of a realtor's opinion. Once you've found a competent realtor that you're going to work with, be very cautious before you sign a contract with them, because you need to know exactly what you're signing in these contracts. Personally, I don't sign any contracts with realtors unless it's specific to a single property they've shown me and I'm closing on that property, and that is all I am obligated to do with them. Because a lot of these realtors, their regular contracts out there say, you're working with me for 12 months, and no matter what you buy, I get a commission on it. So be very cautious what you sign. Try to resist signing anything until you've worked with them, walked through a handful of houses with them or buildings or whatever you're buying, and decide that they are a good realtor. And again, I would really only sign the contract specific to each house that you are looking to acquire, because if they start to get squirrely on you, you can easily dump them and move on to someone better. Step number 4, starting to view properties and making offers. Once you've found the area you like, once you've found the broker you like, you're gonna start viewing properties and you're gonna make offers. Now, do not overpay. You know the market. You reviewed it. You know what you can get for rent, and you know what others are paying. Do not get caught up in emotion and overpay for a property. It will bite your ass in the end. Now, on the same token, don't lose a property over a few $1,000s. in the long run, it will all be a wash. Just be cautious and pay attention when you're making these offers. Keep in mind, any property will generally make sense in a good area at some price point. Now, others may think that the price point is higher and they will overpay for that property. Know what sort of return you want to receive. Don't overpay for a property and get a return that's subpar and not what you're willing to accept. Wait it out. The right property will find you or you will find it. Now, when you're viewing these properties, especially if you're viewing them for the first time, I would recommend, if you have some ability in your market and offers aren't flying within the same hour that you're viewing the property, to get 2 views on the property a day apart. The reason I would recommend that is because the first time you go through a property, you can have rose-colored glasses on and ignore a lot of faults in the property. I would recommend the second day you go and be hypercritical. Make it your mission to be critical of the property. What's wrong with the property? Looking at everything, opening your eyes. You may not know about all the infrastructure of the property. You can easily see if there's rodent damage on the floor, if you see mice droppings, if you see a roof that looks like it's leaking. Open your eyes to the reality. Do not put on rose-colored glasses. It is okay to buy these properties, but know what you're getting into before you get into it so that you can plan for the worst and hope for the best. Number 5, due diligence and inspections. I highly recommend you hire a professional inspector, but if you're going to do it yourself, here's a few things that you should look out for. When you're inspecting a property, always make sure you inspect the roof. Oh, sorry. Check the shingles. Are they tri-tab shingles that are older and discontinued? Can you see the fiberglass? You want to make sure to look at the shingles closely. Maybe lick them a little. Yeah, it tastes like they got another 10 years left. Grainy. Now, other things to check on the roof are things like roof vents, penetrations. Are the roof jacks sealed around perforations? Or do they have visible signs of rodent damage, hail damage, weather damage? Is the roof properly vented? Are there animals getting in? Are there leaks? Are there weird shingle patches? How does the siding look? Did they caulk and paint over deteriorating, rotting siding? Are there any rodents getting in? These are all things you need to check out on the roof. Now, the next thing you want to do is check the crawl space or check the foundation. Are there any animals? Sure hope not. Things you're going to want to inspect. The electrical pipes. Are they all mounted and strapped properly? The foundation, is there cracking? Do they have patches? How does the floor look? Are all the floorboards straight? Do they have signs of rot? Do they have signs of fire damage? How do the pipes look? Are they strapped in? Do the pipes have proper drainage? Are all the beams properly supported with columns and posts? Does the dirt smell okay? Does it taste okay? No. Are there bugs and animals everywhere? Cobwebs. Oh, it's freaking hot. Goddamn, the things I do for YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends. And above all else, hit the like button. Do the toilets flush? Do the showers leak? Are the water heaters plumbed and vented properly? Does the breaker panel work? Do the switches work? Do the sinks work? Do the cabinets open? Now, if all those things aren't in your wheelhouse and you're hiring an inspector that you're hiring is not a builder, most likely. They don't have experience owning houses. They typically are there because they're trained to inspect. They have a checklist. They know how to go down it and inspect these items. They may see things that are not that big of a deal and point them out as a big deal, and they may see things that are a tiny deal that end up being a big deal, such as foundation and other structural things. So if you're really worried about it, get the expert in there, get a structural engineer. You can get a HVAC repair guy, you can get an electrician, you can get a plumber to inspect the property. But generally speaking, with most properties, you can get a pretty good understanding of what you're getting into by just hiring a property inspector, and it's probably less than $500 depending on your area. Now, the other thing that's very critical is the due diligence of the title. Now, you need to very clearly read through all of the title work. You'll generally have that within the first week or two, and you'll have a few days or a week or more to review it. If you're not familiar with it, get with your real estate broker and have them help you go over it. If you don't feel comfortable with them, hire an attorney to go through it with you and make sure the title is free and clear, that there's no judgments, liens, or other obligations on the title that aren't going to be cleared up prior to or at closing. That's a very big deal. Many people overlook this, and they could buy a property with liens from previous contractors or whatever it may be. You got to have a clear title when you take possession and ownership of the property. The other thing to verify in your due diligence process is the rents, or if it has tenants, you need to look for tenant estoppel statements, make sure the tenants are paid up on their rents, and that everything is going to transfer seamlessly into the new ownership at the closing. Now, if you don't have a tenant in the property, you're just going to verify the rents for that house. You should have a pretty good understanding of that neighborhood because you've researched it prior to making offers. But at this point, I would still verify on Zillow, Craigslist, Facebook, Rentometer, HotPads, other websites like this, what the houses are in that neighborhood right that day are getting for rent, how long they're on the market, and where to price your rent. If you price it too high, you're going to get no tenants. If you price it too low, you're going to lose out on money. Somewhere in the middle is probably the sweet spot to be in, but you don't want to have it sit on the market for too long. So pay attention to what others are doing and what's renting, generally speaking, within a few weeks. And that's probably what you should aim for your pricing. In your due diligence period, you're just verifying that pricing to make sure that it works for your cap rate, for your rate of return to the money that you've offered on the property. And you're also reanalyzing it for the issues with the property, because in this inspection, you may find things that are wrong with the property, and that's when you have to evaluate whether the finances of the property still make sense with the damages there. Now, you may ask for a concession from the seller to cover those damages, or maybe even ask them to fix those things, and that is then the best case scenario because your original numbers still work. In the due diligence, if you have major repairs that need to be done, I highly recommend that you get a qualified contractor or two to come in and give you quotes for those repairs to make sure that you've got a full picture painted and you know exactly what you're going into prior to closing. If you want to know how to hire a contractor and not get screwed, stay tuned to the channel. I will be posting a video very soon on how to do exactly that. I'll also put a link in this video description below. Once you've gone through all your inspections, then you can move to the next phase. Now, here's where I have a kind of sort of a step 5.5. It's kind of a halfway in between, a little bit of a cheat code, a hack, if you will. I don't know that I would say I recommend this, and it may not be legal in some states, but some have done it. And if you're very certain that you're going to close, you're past your inspection periods, past your due diligence, and everything looks to be good on the deal, you could potentially start to market the property. And maybe you can get a couple showings with the seller's allowance that you can show the property to potential tenants. Now, I definitely would not recommend accepting any applications or signing any leases until you properly have closed the property. But you could potentially show the property to some prospective tenants and start getting those contacts lined up so that when you close the deal, you may be able to roll into it with the tenant ready to rock and roll and pay you rent. Step number 6. Close on the property. Now, you always want to do a final inspection either the day before or the day of the closing of the property to verify that everything that you saw in your previous inspections is exactly the way it's stated in the contract on the day of closing. Then you can go to closing. The other thing to be cautious about is wire transfers. Make sure to verify 10 times, not actually 10 times, but verify the heck out of where you're sending your money, because there are many scams out there. And there's lots of wire fraud scams where you could send your money to someone in God only knows what country, and you'll never see it again. So I always call the title company. I call the broker to verify. I call the title company at another location before I send any money out at the closing to make damn sure that my money is going exactly to the right routing and account number to make the closing happen. You can also do it with a cashier's check or some other forms of payment depending on what the title company will accept at the closing. Step number 7, now that you've closed on the property, you're there and you're doing the little repairs or cleaning that you need to do to get the tenant in the property. Maybe you've bought something turnkey, it's totally ready to go, and you just start showing it at that point. But perhaps you're buying something that's totally blighted and it needs lots of work. Everything you do, whether it's turnkey or not, or somewhere in the middle, make it tenant proof. I like to have in my properties, all the paint is the same color. The glossier you make it, the easier it is to clean. And going through these properties and making sure that lights are changed. I typically try to go LED on everything so that I don't have to repair it over the years and replace bulbs. Any little thing that you can see as a potential issue later down the road as a repair, I would recommend doing it now. Maybe you change that water heater out because it looks like it's rusting and about to blow out, and it's probably going to rust and blow out in the middle of a Sunday night or a Saturday night on the Super Bowl, who knows? If it looks like it's bad, now's the time. If you've got the money, you might just go ahead and change it out and tenant-proof that property. Anything you can do to make it easier for the property to rent and stay rented and not have to have lots of repairs along the way, because those are expensive. Now, if you're a very handy person and you live in town and you're around, maybe you leave some of these things as is, you don't change them. But you got to make sure you check the furnace filters and flush the water heater if you're in a hard water area. These sorts of things, go through, make the property tenant proof, and get it ready to rent. Get it clean, clean the windows, vacuum the carpet, whatever you've got to do to make it tenant ready. Step number 8. Get the property rented. Now, at this point, you're probably advertising the property on Craigslist, Zillow, HotPads, Facebook, any site around. Maybe there's local bulletin boards, maybe you have yard signs, etc., to get the property out there and marketed for rent. Now, when you're going through the screening process of the tenants, this is where I highly recommend that you make yourself familiar with the laws in the state that you're in and make sure that you're not discriminating against a tenant for the wrong reasons in your area. Now, the typical qualifications that I require for the tenant, and I do not care anything else as long as they have a decent credit score, haven't been evicted, and can pay rent on time. Because at the end of the day, I would rent to a rock or a piece of dirt if it could pay rent. I don't care where you're from, what you do, how you do it. As long as you can reasonably pay rent and make it on time every month, I'll pretty much rent to you. Now, pre-screen your tenants. Otherwise, it potentially could cost you many more times the cost of a vacant property later, going through lawsuits, going through repairs, these sort of things. When you're pre-screening tenants, you can use local companies that know all the laws and the wherewithals of the property. Now, you may hire a property manager or you may not, but whether you do or don't, you've got to make sure that your tenants are getting pre-screened so that they can actually be able to afford the property and pay the rents every month. I recommend using sites such as TransUnion SmartMove. It gives you a tenant rent score that's a combination of their financial obligations, their credit score, and whether they've been evicted or not in the past, and that can help you make your decision as to whether to rent to the tenant or not. Now, TransUnion doesn't pay me, but I really like their website, but they should pay me. So if you work for TransUnion, you guys should sponsor me. I really like your product and I'd love to rep it more in my videos. Now, you'll typically have an application. They'll give that in. You're able to do pre-screening. You call previous landlords, make sure previous landlords haven't had issues with them, they didn't try to burn down the house, put holes in the wall, whatever. Make sure they're going to be good tenants. Then you can get a good lease. Make sure you have a rock solid lease. If you need to meet with an attorney, meet with other property managers, whatever you can do in your area to get a rock solid lease to make sure that you are covered. Now, once you've got the tenant pre-screened and into the property, you can move on to the next step. Step number 9, sit back, relax, go to the golf course, go to the lake, on a boat, just like we are here, and enjoy that cash flow. Now, what's after collecting cash flow? Step number 10, making sure your property is being run in a good condition. Whether you have a property management company or you're managing it yourself, you gotta stop in from time to time and make sure inside, outside that the tenants are taking care of the property. If there's things that are broken, that they get fixed so that they don't create damage to the property that will cost you more money in the long run. Water, it's the biggest thing to watch out for. Pipes in the wall, roof, everything. Anything water can cause a lot of damage. Look at the Grand Canyon. Water cut that whole entire thing. So pay attention to what the tenants are doing in your property. Check in from time to time. Even if you have a property management company, you've got to check in on the property to guarantee that you can still continue to get that cash flow for a long time to come. Towards the end of the tenant's lease, you got to check in with them and see whether they're going to renew the lease or whether they're going to move out. And that's when you really need to make sure that you've got your ducks in a row. If they're moving out, that you start advertising the property and showing the property. And if they're going to stay there, negotiate the rate and get a lease signed so that you can continue collecting the cash flow. Well, if you like me talking into this golf club mic, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and the notification bell down below. And if you've got something constructive to say, hit it in the comments. Anyone can do it. Real estate investment, it's really easy. You just got to have a little grit and you got to sweat a little blood. Cash flow, baby!